Hello and welcome to the board. Firstly, sincere apologies for those delays we had. We had some gremlins in our system. My name's Paul Llewellyn. I'm an Agile coach here at Boost, and I'd like to introduce you to a new face on the board, Gavin Coughlin. Is that the correct pronunciation?
No, it's not. It's Gavin Coughlin.
Oh, I always get it wrong.
Thanks, Paul.
Hello and welcome to the board. Firstly, sincere apologies for those delays we had.
Okay.
The gremlins are continuing, but we'll carry on.
So yes, I'm Gavin Coughlin. I'm an Agile coach here at Boost. This is my first time on the board with Paul. I'm crazy excited about the situation we're in, and like I said, apologies for those technical issues. We seem to have everything sorted out now.
It's okay. It's showing my name. Oh no, we've got some overlay issues as well. That's great. The gremlins are just carrying on through. We're here today to talk about the project Kickoff. I'm interested to know, Gav, you've worked recently with a team and you've done a project Kickoff, so you might be the best person to talk.
Okay. Well, we are going to be talking about project Kickoff and all the different things that are involved in that. And first of all, I'd just like to address a couple of the questions we got before we actually went live. We got one from Kirsten Donaldson, standing over there at the moment, and she asked, what sort of activities do you suggest for training a team? We are actually going to go into some of that today, so if you watch the entire show, you'll find out some of the stuff that we do, at least here. And we also had a good question from Gareth Morgan. He asked, do we need a sprint zero, which is a very interesting question. There's lots of different feelings about this. Here we avoid sprint zeros as much as possible, and the reason for that is we feel that you're just gathering your requirements for a long period of time before you actually start your sprints. So we like to just start at sprint one and start working straight away, and every story should be a slice through the entire stack of work. So that might be UX right down to server setup and stuff like that. So we do try to embody everything within each story, from story one right through to the last story. A lot of people do sprint zeros. It depends on the situation. You might be in an organization that absolutely needs a sprint zero, and you need to have a couple of weeks of setup and getting everything in place. So it's really what you feel is best. I would recommend to try to avoid sprint zero if possible, so you can start delivering value from day one.
That said, I've worked with organisations that do have used sprint zeros, and it's not really. I wouldn't call them a sprint zero. There's a number of activities that people have to run up before they start their actual sprint work, and so it doesn't involve the whole team. So therefore, I think sprint zero is a bit of a misnomer. There's just activities like user experience mapping, which is some preliminary work that you have to do to write stories before you can start the sprint. There's also some work around maybe the infrastructure side of things, and maybe a discussion with an architecture team about technologies and so on.
Paul, can I interrupt you for a second? Gareth Morgan has just said, okay, who put the mogwai in the water?
Yeah.
Another gremlin reference, we are actually broadcasting the computer desktop at the moment rather than our images.
Okay.
So I hope you can hear us though. I hope you can hear us. We will keep talking, and hopefully we'll get our picture back soon.
Yeah. Gavin actually has a part-time job as a radio DJ, so it's probably familiar work for him right now. No picture, just talkie.
So I would like to actually start talking about the project Kickoff now. So Paul, how do you like to start your project Kickoff?
Well, there's I think before we get into the actual meeting, it's good to have an analogy, I think, and I was thinking of one today. And we're both old school kind of, or old country people.
That's right. Yes.
Irish and English.
Yeah.
And I imagined the king standing in front of his troops, rallying them to call before the battle commences.
Wow, okay.
I mean, what would you imagine the Project Kickoff meeting is?
Well, for me, Project Kickoff is a time for everybody to get to know each other and feel comfortable around each other and get to know what everybody's role is, and also give everybody an understanding of what the project is actually about and what the vision might be. But there's also lots of activities I'd like to go in. A lot of time when you do a kickoff for especially a Scrum activity, people aren't actually aware what Scrum entails, what Scrum means.
Yeah.
So you might want to have a training session before the kickoff as well.
Yeah.
During the kickoff, I like to go through the vision for the sprint, or not for the sprint, for the whole project. and go through things like definition of ready, definition of done, and a team charter. Should we talk about each
we
activity
should.
one by one?
So I think it's important to say, that the people that are involved in this meeting as well are pretty definitely the team, definitely the product owner and the Scrum Master, but also the stakeholders and anyone who's got a vested interest in the project should be present. It's really important they have a voice and involvement in this meeting. It's quite a crucial meeting. So anyway, usually I'd post an agenda of what we were going to go through at the beginning of the meeting, and I'd go through a round of introductions so that everyone in the room knew who everybody was and what the involvement they had in the project. And then we'd usually follow up with the product owner giving their vision, I think. Would that be?
Yeah, absolutely. It is the product owner who's meant to come to the project with a vision, so it would be best left to them to sort of describe the vision for the project, and I suppose the team are going to be asking them a lot of questions as well, and just gives everybody a really good understanding and a shared understanding of what the whole project is going to be about, really.
I think the vision, and I encourage those kind of vision statements at the beginning of each sprint as well, during sprint planning, and I think they really help to focus the team on what they're going to do over the coming months or however long the project's going to last. They and it's great to hear it from someone who knows the business so well that that the product owner will deliver what they would like to, what they're envisioning happening. So it really helps the team to. And I've been on many projects that haven't had a project kickoff. Yeah. And
Well, that's always a big mistake, because if you don't have your definition of done in place, or even some like your definition of ready or team charter, then you can run into some problems.
Yeah.
I see Petty Morgan said 8M software control lol. Yes, you got an insight into our inner workings there. I hope you enjoyed that. I'd just like to talk about some activities I do with people before even the project kickoff.
Yeah.
Say if they're new to Scrum, and you and me have been involved in these quite a few times. Here at Boost, we run free workshops every Friday, which is Introduction to Scrum, and we also do user story ones. We do different workshops. But the Introduction to Scrum is just a 2-hour intro, and it gives people the very basics of Scrum. It talks about the roles and the activities and the artifacts that you find in Scrum and how the whole thing works. And that's a pretty useful 2 hours, and it's a great time for the whole team to sit down and find out about Scrum and how the project might run. There is also, if you don't have 2 hours, or if the people that you're talking to don't have 2 hours, a thing that Lisa Atkins does called Scrum in 10 minutes. Lisa Atkins is a coach of Agile coaches, and she's got a couple of great books out there. And if you Google Lisa Atkins Scrum in 10 minutes, you should be able to find her YouTube clip on it. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say Rally as well. Rally, they make software for managing Scrum projects or Agile projects, and they have a great set of resources. Rally are really community focused, and they have a number of online sort of videos, and they also run webinars regularly as well. So I really recommend checking Rally Dev out.
And the Lisa Atkins Scrum in 10 minutes, I used it recently for a briefing for some clients, and they had an hour to spare, so Scrum in 10 minutes, I expanded it basically, and you do sketch out on a whiteboard the roles and the whole Scrum framework, and as well some of the artifacts, and it's a very simple diagram. And as I talk through it, it's a great way of describing the whole Scrum process, because it goes from the very start to the very end of each sprint. And as you're talking through it, you can go into, if you're talking about the Scrum Master or the product owner or the team, you can talk more in depth about their roles. And it's just a very simple way for people to get an understanding of how Scrum works. And even if you're completely new to it, by the end of that, you should have a fairly solid understanding of how it's going to work. Obviously, not all the complexities, but the basics of the framework.
Going to the other extreme, we've recently run a few Scrum hands-on workshops, which I find really useful for people. I like to see the light coming on, because it's a hands-on, usually a sprint, maybe 2 sprints or 3 sprints of simulated Scrum work, and I really think that helps people see what the what they're going to be doing.
Absolutely. Not only does it let people see how a sprint might run, and these are mini sprints, so each sprint might just be 10 minutes or something like that, but it's a lot of fun. You make stories that are quite good fun. The last time we ran it, we had stories like trying to get 5 coins into a bucket from a distance of 5 paces or 10 paces. And people get really into it, and we built another story was about building a house of cards to 3 levels, which turns out is insanely difficult for a lot of people. But you have these stories that people size and prioritize and commit to at the start of their mini sprint, and then they try to complete these stories within the sprint. And you have your sprint planning, and you have a review at the end, and a retrospective as well, all done in a very mini scale. And not only is it fun, but people really do see how things are going to work, and they can visualize how it's going to work in an actual work environment too.
And the sprints were really short. We were running, I think, 20-minute sprints. Is that right? For 10 minutes, so 10-minute days, something like that.
That's right.
Just a couple of days of sprinting, so it's 20. It's a really short, fast, furious activity, and it gives people a really good opportunity to see the process or see the cycle of Scrum in action.
Yeah. I suppose we should talk about the definition of done, definition of ready, and team charter, because we've mentioned them previously, and some people mightn't be completely aware what those are.
Yeah.
We've both been involved in a lot of these. Would you like to talk a bit about the definition of done and what that means?
Sure. I was actually going to talk about the definition of ready, but
whatever you like, Paul.
Definition of ready, because I think that comes first sometimes because you usually start writing stories before the team is assembled. The product owner will often have an idea of what the product's going to look like, and so the definition of ready really helps the product owner understand what a story looks like and what it needs to be complete and well defined. I think. As usual, I'm struggling for words, but it's about getting the stories well defined so that when we come to the first sprint planning meeting, the team can just pick them up and
that's right. And for me, it's about making sure a definition of ready means what it defines what it means for a story to be ready to come into the product backlog and to be talked about at sprint planning, and then be taken into the sprint backlog as well.
That's right.
So some points in your definition of ready might be that it's got full acceptance criteria.
Yep, it's we like that style of story writing where we, as an actor, I want some action, so I gain an achievement. So we'll be probably talking about that as part of the definition of ready as well. Yeah,
exactly. Because if a story doesn't have that achievement part of it, or the why part of it, then there might be a problem with the story. It might need to be readdressed or rethought out, because we can't think of the why for a story. Maybe it's not needed, or maybe you're just coming at it from the wrong angle.
The danger without the why, of course, is there's no sort of scope or boundary to that story, so it could go on forever. Yeah,
that's right. Okay, and the definition of done might be something that you also do in your project Kickoff, and that quite often comes after the definition of ready.
Yep.
And for me, the definition of done is just a chance for the team, and this is very much driven by the team, to come up with almost like a checklist of what needs to be met for each story for that to be considered complete. So when they finish a story or a piece of work and it's all checked off on the definition of done, they know that they can then send that story on to the product owner for hopefully acceptance.
I ran a workshop yesterday, an intro to Scrum. So I think the exact words we had were a value-added checklist. So it's talking about not the what of the story, but it's talking about the quality for each story. I think the qualities of each story.
What sort of things would you expect to find in your definition of done?
Definitely some form of reference to testing, whether it's manual or automated testing. Usually both. For a developer, it would involve committing source code to a master branch or something similar, probably deployed to a user acceptance test environment for the product owner to accept. It depends. Some people say ready for acceptance on the definition of done, or product owner has accepted the story. That's done. And
an important thing to note about the definition of done as well, you will go through this at your project Kickoff, but it's not set in stone, and this definition of done can be added to at any point throughout the project.
It's definitely a living document.
Yeah, sometimes stuff comes up in your retrospectives, and it becomes clear that there is something that's been missed and needs to be added to the definition of done, so that it's looked at for each story.
Yeah, or you just see recurring themes on your stories, in the acceptance criteria, and eventually the team will say, no, we may as well just migrate that to the definition of done.
Yeah. And do you want to talk about the team charter? Because that's quite often something that you do in these kickoffs after the definition are ready and done as well.
That's right. So the team is usually a discussion with the team, i.e. the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the developers or the development team of how they're going to work together. And it might be there's usually a number of sections to this. We might talk about meetings, for example, or technologies that we're going to use. Any others that spring to your mind?
Yeah, I really think it's important to go through some of the values and some of the behaviours that the team is going to hold on to throughout the course of a project. So values, what might be you're going to hold yourself with integrity or be respectful to your team members, and be courageous, because it's very important to be courageous at things like retrospectives and any time throughout the project, really. If you have an idea, put your hand up. So I like the team to understand those sort of things and know that no idea is a stupid idea, and everybody is open to everybody else and is empowered to come up with any ideas or decisions themselves. And behaviours might be just some things you want to talk about that can support these values as well.
So like a really simple team charter I think would look like, you might say we'll have stand-ups every day at 10 a.m. We'll time box our meetings, and we will hold those time boxes. We will be respectful of each other, for example.
And we might just want to say things like turn up at meetings on time. Meetings will start on time whether you're there or not. So there's a whole plethora of things that you can put into the team charter, and this can also be added to at any point throughout a project. You don't really need to. It's not set in stone, much like the definition of done and the definition of ready. Really,
that's right.
I quite like doing team charters because it's a great chance for the team to talk about that sort of stuff and the sort of stuff that they might usually talk about in a work environment. That, like, the chance to be courageous and to be honest and to be open isn't necessarily something that everybody's used to talking about on a day-to-day basis. And
go on.
And it's just really interesting to see people get involved in that and get a good understanding of that.
Some of the one other activity, it's a bit of a segue into this, is journey lines, and we sometimes run this, and it's a really good way for the team. Journey lines is where each team member draws or plots a journey of like a histogram of how they got to where they are today and coming into this project, and then each team member posts it up onto the wall, and they talk through their journey line and how they got to this point in their lives. And it really helps the team understand where each team member has come from, and it really. So I think it's a really good activity to run before you run the team charter. If you've got, it takes half an hour, maybe an hour.
It's a lot of fun too. I found it a lot of fun.
And it really brings the team together, I think, in understanding and a common understanding of each other.
Well, I mean, you remember when we did it here, we did it relatively recently, and every team member went through and did their journey line. Some people's were, one A4 sheets. Some people's were a string of A3 sheets. Some people had far more detailed lives than others. But it was fascinating for us here, and we learned a lot about each other that we didn't know before. And I think gave us all a bit more of an understanding about each other, and, like you said, where we come from and stuff like that. And it was really, really useful, and it absolutely did bring the team together and caused a lot of other conversations. And I absolutely would recommend doing journey lines if you're with a new team, or even a team that's been together for a while and they haven't done anything like this, because it really does make people respond to each other in a different way, in a very positive way. And it gives you that opportunity as well to learn what each other's experiences are. So when you're actually working on the project, you can say, well, so and so, he knows all about this. I go and ask him. He did this in a previous job or whatever. That's right. And it's hard to describe exactly what journey lines look like, because people like to put a lot of graphics on it. People like to get a bit adventurous. Some people might just draw a line that goes up and down, whereas some people might like to add little images according to what they're talking about. Some people, when we did them, started at their birth, and some people just did it from when they started working at Boost.
Or arrived in New Zealand, as I did.
I think I did arrive in New Zealand as well.
Usually we use like the emotional histogram format, so we have a horizontal line, and we have below the line we have sad face, above the line we have a happy face, and you can plot the emotional kind of journey.
Yes, exactly. Well, look, we're just about running out of time for today. The show was cut short because of all the gremlins in the system earlier on, but before we do go, I'd like to answer just another question we got there from Ben. Did you find the journey lines helped with helping team members to respect each other? And yes, absolutely. It's very interesting just to hear about people's lives and some of the stuff they've gone through in their lives and in their careers. And it absolutely gives you a newfound respect for this person. It's not just somebody who turns up and exists in the workplace, and they have a rich life outside of work, and it's fantastic to know that and to be aware of that.
Totally, yeah. I think we were surprised when we ran it here. We were surprised by how many people were budding entrepreneurs and had tried to start their own businesses, and and their journey getting to this point, and so on. There was a number of things that came up for the team, which really helped the team gain a new understanding of each other, and like you say, I think respect is part of that.
Okay, and we're just out of time now. We didn't get through everything today, but that just gives us more stuff to get through next time. So thank you very much for joining us, and see you next time on the board.
Thank you.